Hello, I'm Judith Sweet. Welcome to What's Cooking. It always thrills me to go shopping and see row upon row of fresh, colourful fruit and vegetables, and I often come away with more than I bargained for and a variety of vegetables. Vegetables form a very important part of our eating, and there are endless interesting ways to serve them, and one should never become bored. Today I have quite a selection of recipes, and I'll begin with a wholemeal vegetable flan. This is made from 1 cup of wholemeal plain flour and 1 cup of self-raising flour, and to that I've added 125 grams of cold butter. So we'll turn it on, it will go better. That's just going to process now until it becomes like breadcrumbs, which will only take a very brief while, and that's fine. And then to add to that is added 1 egg, which I've beaten in with 3 tablespoons of chilled water. Remember, when you're making pastry, to keep everything as cold as possible. I'm just going to add this and keep the machine moving until it starts to form a ball. It's just moving around now and gathering all the liquid. You can see it's come together immediately. That happens. Stop the machine so it won't be over processed, and then you can join it together with your hand. Just make sure you switch the machine off and just see how that's coming well together like that. Any more processing you'd end up with tough pastry. Now the idea is to take that out, form it into a ball, cover it in some plastic wrap and pop it in the refrigerator to allow it to relax for about 30 minutes. Now, because of time, I've already done that and have a flan dish already prepared, or this is a quiche dish actually I'm doing this in, which is quite suitable. About a 20 to 22 centimetre dish, and I've just very lightly greased that and rolled out the wholemeal pastry and pressed it into the flan dish. Now there are 2 ways of doing this. You could then chill this while you're preparing the filling for the tart, or you could cook it for about 10 minutes at 180 to 200 degrees, and then when it comes out and still warm, brush it with a little egg white, and that'll form a seal, and then you'll find that the egg and milk mixture won't have a chance of going through the pastry, and you'll end up with a very crisp pastry and a lovely soft filling inside. So if you've got time, I would suggest that that's a good thing to do. So I'll just pop that there while we have a look at the ingredients and for the filling, and they really are very colourful, very nutritious too. In the container here I've sautéed together 1 leek, which was washed very well and sliced, and half a red capsicum, which has just been diced, in a tiny amount of butter. I'm going to place that on the base of the tart, which is very colourful. If you haven't got leek, you could perhaps use a little more onion. Add another onion instead of the leek, but you'll find that the leek is a milder flavour than onion, and so that's why I've used that. And then I have 2 cups of zucchini. You may think that doesn't really look like 2 cups, but after it's been grated, I then put it into a clean white tea towel and squeezed it firmly, and quite a lot of the moisture came out. And that will find that you'll have a tart which will set better. That juice would have come out into the tart and mingled with the milk, eggs and cheese, and you might have had a watery sort of tart. You've probably had that on occasions, and that would be the reason. So if ever you're making things from grated zucchini, like a zucchini cake or zucchini fritters, it's a good idea to squeeze it out first. And I find that I have a couple of tea towels in my kitchen specifically kept for those sort of reasons, and I make sure that I wash them separately so that they don't have any soap flavours in them at all. Just rinse them out separately and make sure that they don't have any dye, so you're best to choose a white one. You can see how dry that is, and you'll find you'll have a better finish to the tart. And then to that is added 3 eggs, and that's mixed together with 3 tablespoons of grated parmesan, which I've used fresh parmesan. I think you do get a better flavour that way, so if you can manage to get some of that, and 125 grams of ricotta cheese. Now there are some, of course there's the fresh ricotta, which doesn't last very long at all, and you need to use very quickly, or there are some types of ricotta around which do last longer. So just mix the egg and the cheeses together like that, and then to that is added a half a cup of milk and a tablespoon of chopped mixed herbs. I have a combination today, a tiny bit of tarragon, some fresh chives and parsley. and a half a cup of milk, and then just a tiny dash of Tabasco to give it a little tang. And you could salt and pepper that too, to your own liking. So I'm just going to put a little rock salt in there and some freshly ground black pepper. That's just mixed together and then poured gently over the colourful vegetables in the centre. And it's baked for about 35 minutes at 180 degrees. You could put the pastry in at about 200 and then lower it after 10 minutes so that the egg mixture doesn't boil. You'll find that that will curdle and separate. But to help crunch up the pastry, you could put it in a little higher. And that looks very nice, and I can assure you that that will be an appetising tart and full of good food values there, with all the vitamins, minerals and fibres and so on in the vegetables, and also some extra fibre in the wholemeal pastry. Now on to a very simple dish. This is really a side salad. I'm going to make a cucumber and orange salad, and I'm just going to combine some sour cream with some chopped mint, little lemon juice and a few teaspoons of caster sugar to make a dressing, and into that fold some cucumber and orange. I'll just finish slicing the cucumber while we take a break, and I'll come back with that in just a moment. Back to the cucumber and orange salad I mentioned just before the break. I've combined the sour cream, 300 ml of sour cream, a tablespoon of chopped mint, 3 teaspoons of caster sugar, and 1.5 tablespoons of lemon juice needs to go into there. And that's combined, that makes a dressing. And to that I'm going to add a cucumber, to which I've removed the seeds. If you didn't have a bitter-free one, you would need to peel it as well. And then just slice it very finely, and that is added to the cream dressing, and also 3 large oranges are used, and they're cut into segments and added to that. This makes a delightful side dish. It can be served on crisp lettuce leaves, and serve that with some fish or chicken or even pork. It goes very well as a cold side dish. Most appetising. And if you find that the dressing is a little thick, you could thin that down with just a tiny amount of natural yogurt and perhaps a tiny more lemon juice if you wished. So this is very colourful. I like the bitter-free cucumber with the skin still on. It's quite soft, and I think it makes it look more attractive, a real contrast there. And then this is flavoured too right at the end with just a little tarragon and basil. If you don't have the fresh, you could use some dried. Unfortunately, the tarragon wilts a little under the lights in the studio, but you can see the fine pointed leaf of that. It's really quite strongly flavoured, so just a small amount, perhaps half a teaspoon chopped with the fresh and 1/4 teaspoon dried, and the same with the basil. But the fresh herbs, of course, are superior. Now to segment the orange, rather than getting all the membrane around the orange, I think I have shown you this before, but taking a small knife, remember good knives are a real investment in your kitchen. You'll have them for years and you'll enjoy the work that you do. Just cut the segment out like that, leaving the membrane behind. You don't really waste very much at all, and you'll have a much better finished product if you do that, just all around the orange. And then you can cut those in half so that this is so it's then moves more around the salad than if they're in large pieces. You'll find it's easier to manage then. It's all cut into bite-sized pieces. And so the orange and the juice that you collect from that can go into the dressing and the cucumber. So this is just a very simple combination of ingredients, and also very colourful. And then on presentation I'm going to serve that on some crisp cos lettuce leaves, and perhaps a variety of lettuces there. So I'll just put that aside now. I already have the tarragon and the basil in there to flavour it, and it has the mint, so it's really quite a herby, flavoursome dish. And we'll finish there. I've got a lot to get through today, so I'll continue. But just briefly before going, a good way to keep your herbs fresh, rather than put them out in a jug of water, which always looks very nice, it's a good idea to keep them in a clean plastic bag and keep them in the bottom of the refrigerator, and you'll find that they'll keep fresh for much longer that way than being exposed and just in water, and you don't get those smelly stalks that way either. Now on to an interesting variation for vegetables. I'm going to make some carrot and almond cookies. In the food processor I have 250 grams of softened butter and only 1/4 cup of caster sugar, so they're not very sweet at all. And I'm just going to quickly cream that together. And then to that is added 2 cups of grated carrot. That was about 3 medium carrots, and 1 egg. Just a few drops of vanilla essence if you wish, or because it has almonds in it, almond essence would go quite well with this as well. So I'm going to add that. The food processor certainly makes this job so much simpler and faster. And now 1/2 cup of slivered almonds. They could be toasted, but it's not necessary. 1/4 cup of wheat germ. Make sure you keep your wheat germ in the refrigerator after you've opened the packet, because it does tend to turn rancid quite easily. And then 2 cups of plain flour sifted with 1 teaspoon of baking powder. And then that's all mixed together. And it goes onto a tray. I don't need to grease my tray because I'm going to use a non-stick tray. And just in teaspoons, and they come out like little lumps. They won't spread very much at all, so you can put them fairly close together. So that's formed a ball. Very simple, wasn't it? And I'll just put a couple out. I've already made some of these so I can show you the finished result. And there you are, just in lovely colourful teaspoons. You can see that some of the carotene has gone from the carrot into the entire mixture, and so they really are nice. Keep them lumpy like that. They'll come out, as I said, they won't spread very much at all, and you'll find that they're very tasty biscuits, not too sweet, and the wheat germ adds some fibre, so does the carrot, and they really are quite unusual. I think you'll enjoy those. Now on to another very simple dish. This is something that you could use leftover vegetables, or you could make just a variation. Sometimes cabbage isn't very interesting, and so this is an old Scottish recipe called Scottish rumbledy thumps, which sounds a bit ominous to me. I'm going to put this mixture in a greased oven-proof dish. You could use a deep casserole dish, and in this container I have 250 grams of cabbage, which I sliced finely and has just been lightly cooked, 250 grams of mashed potato, and 1 medium diced onion, and that's just all combined together with a little salt and freshly ground pepper. I don't know that I would make the cabbage especially for this if I was at home, but if you had some leftover cabbage and potato, it's certainly a good way to use that up, and I'm sure a bit of leftover carrot through that wouldn't hurt either. And then that's just pressed into the container, and a cup of grated cheddar cheese over the top, and then all that has to do is heat through in the oven and the cheese to turn golden. So it's really very simple, and as I said, a bit different way of using up some leftover vegetables, or using cabbage as a variation. And you could mix the cheese with some breadcrumbs if you wish. Now I'm just going to sprinkle that over the top like that and pop that into the oven, and we'll come back in a moment. Now back with one of my very favourite vegetables, fresh asparagus, and which is absolutely superb when it's in season. Now it's very easy to prepare. All you need to do is to wash it first, and then to remove the tough section you just hold it in your hands and snap it, and you'll find that the tough part will come away and you'll be left with the tender section. So that's very easy to do. And then just with a vegetable peeler you can just peel away part of that stem if you wish. If you're sure that it's really, really tender, well then that's maybe not even necessary either. Now there are various ways of cooking asparagus. Today I have a lovely asparagus steamer, this high basket here, and I have the stainless steel pot on with a small amount of water in that. And you could tie it into bundles, or with the basket it really isn't necessary because it holds the asparagus upright. But it's a good idea to cook the asparagus without the tips being immersed in water, and then they hold their shape and their colour. I find another very good way to cook the asparagus is in the microwave, and I use an oven bag, and it cooks it beautifully and it comes out still a brilliant green. Now I'm going to place the basket in this pan, and it'll only take about 10 minutes, and then it's very easy to remove too, this little handle on there, and I can take that out and let it drain. And I'm going to serve this very simply today in a nutty brown almond sauce. So in the pan I have about 60 grams of melted butter. I'm just going to let that heat, and while it's heating, add 1/4 cup of slivered almonds. And I got my herbs muddled a little before. I did say with the cucumber and orange salad that I added mint and then a little extra tarragon and basil, but my tarragon and basil is really best used in this asparagus dish. And just before serving I'm going to add the 1/2 teaspoon of fresh chopped tarragon and basil, or 1/4 teaspoon of dried, and just a squeeze of lemon juice in that, and a grinding of black pepper. Another very simple way to serve asparagus, and a real favourite at my house, is I just cook it very lightly in the microwave and then drizzle a tiny amount of melted butter on the top and serve that with a very soft poached egg, and it is absolutely beautiful. And you make sure you dip the spears of the asparagus in the soft yolk of the egg. It has to be a lightly cooked poached egg. So now I'm just going to let that cook away there into a nutty brown, and we're going to go on to something that's absolutely superb, very, very good for you. In fact, this is one of the recipes from a Pritikin style book of mine, and I'm calling it a super salad. So you can see all these super vegetables that I have here, along with some orange, and I'm going to combine all these together. I have 4 good-sized heads of broccoli, which I've just blanched. I did that using an oven bag and about a tablespoon of water, did that in the microwave, drained it off and then chilled it. I'm going to put that in there. I think I may have been a little generous, so I'll hold some back. And 8 golden button squash, and I've just quartered those and blanched those too for a couple of moments in the microwave, and I've chilled them. Now you could make this salad by just layering them all or tossing them all together. That's something that you can decide upon. Also, I've had a beautiful green and red capsicum, and just sliced that very finely, making sure that I removed all the seeds and pith from the capsicum after it had been washed, and adding that. And something interesting here, a red onion. Now, if you don't like onion, of course, don't add it, but this is really quite mild, very colourful, and so I'm adding 1 to this, but you could leave that out if you so wished. And it also has some spring onion in that too. So, of course, all of these things are your decision, but this is just, I think, an interesting combination of colour and vegetables, texture, etc. And so I had about 4 spring onions there that I've chopped, using some of the green as well. And then 2 oranges folded through that with the juice, and I prepared those in the same way I showed you for the cucumber and orange salad, except I've kept these in full segments. And I've cut them out without the membrane. I'm going to also add some orange rind to that, and I've used the zester to remove the rind from one of the oranges before I segmented it. Now just a dash of or just cider vinegar is poured over the top of that. Probably about 3 tablespoons full altogether. You could put some black pepper on the top if you wished. And after I've tossed this, and just before I serve it, I'm going to sprinkle the top quite generously with some sesame seed. This gives it a lovely flavour, combines well with the apple cider vinegar, and also, as I've mentioned before, sesame seeds are quite a good source of calcium, and so then we're adding some extra nutrition there and an extra texture. And so I think you'll agree with me that that really is a super salad. And for those people who are watching their cholesterol intake or their calorie intake, you could serve that with a separate bowl of mayonnaise or vinaigrette, and then people can add that as they desire. Now we'll just remove the butter from the heat there so that it doesn't become too brown, and show you the cucumber and orange salad, which I have combined there. That's looking nice, and I'm going to very shortly place that in some crisp lettuce leaves. And now we'll just check the oven for the Scottish onion and cabbage combination and see if that's browned, and then we'll take a break and come back with our dishes to present. The cheese is all melted there, and it really does look rather nice. And for those people who don't enjoy cabbage, I'm sure that this is one way that you'll find it much more palatable. We'll now take a break, and I'll come back with our presentation of all the lovely vegetables and their various ways in a few moments. I've been very busy and everything is finally finished and ready. These are the carrot and almond cookies, and don't be alarmed if you don't have wheat germ in your kitchen, because I found them quite successful with some crushed cornflakes or even some Weet Bix. I'm sure would be fine. And I've just used a little marigold there to combine with the carrot colour, and they really are quite tasty. They keep well. Peanuts too as a substitute for the almonds would be fine, so you'll end up having carrot and peanut or some different sort of biscuit altogether. Now over here to the cucumber and orange salad mixed with the sour cream. Remember to use a little yogurt if you wish to thin it down. I'll just lift this and show you another way of presenting this, and quite a few salads. One I showed you recently, a pasta one, would be fine served in halved out capsicum shells. And if you alternated around a plate the red and green, it would be very colourful. I've served that on a combination of salad greens there, garnished it with a little mint because of the mint flavour through the cream. Very nice as an accompaniment to fish or chicken. On to the scramble of cabbage and potato. Not madly exciting looking, but as I said, a variation on using up some leftovers, or another way to serve cabbage, which is a very cheap vegetable, very good for you and very plentiful. And the asparagus, it just looks lovely. I don't think it needs any other garnish at all. The butter's gone a nutty brown, and the aroma from the basil and tarragon mixed with the almonds is very nice. And you could just serve that individually on entree plates or on a platter like this, and serve some tongs so that you don't damage the asparagus. And the quiche, I've used some zucchini cut sideways to make a little garnish for that. You can see that it's quite set, quite firm, not runny at all, and that is because I strained that zucchini through the tea towel, and so it hasn't got an excess of juice there. Can you see how lovely and firm that is? Very colourful, very nutritious, and a nice combination of textures in there too. And then our super salad, which I've topped with some sesame seeds. It has the cider vinegar through that, and I'm just accompanying that with some mayonnaise, and so it's your own choice if you wish to add those calories or that sort of flavour to that dish. A lovely combination of vegetables, and you can see some of the varieties of vegetables which are readily available in our stores, and the little button squash which I've used in the salad. Of course you could use those fried. Some of the new carrots, the little stumpy carrots, the red onions I've used in the salad, fresh corn, pumpkins, and our old friend celery here. So there are lovely vegetables there, and you try using some variety with your vegetables, and I'm sure you'll add interest to your life.